We don't lose weight to get healthy. We get healthy to lose weight. There's
Yes.
a huge difference there. And nobody has a weight problem. I used to be obese. I never had a weight problem. It is a weight symptom. So
Mm.
by focusing on calories in versus calories out, you are treating the symptom and you're distracted from what really matters, which is hormones and inflammation. That is the root cause of why somebody can't lose weight. So by shifting the premise and understanding that it's about getting healthy to lose weight, that is the first step there. And when you start doing that and start focusing on,
Hey, welcome back to Pretty Well. I'm Lisa Smith, and I have an incredible guest. I'm excited to be talking with Ben Azadi. Ben is a leading authority on metabolic health. He's a New York Times bestselling author of Metabolic Freedom and one of the most impactful voices in the space today. After losing 80 pounds and transforming his own life, he's on a mission to help 1 billion people break free from physical and mental obesity. His work has reached millions worldwide, and he's personally coached thousands to reclaim their health. Welcome, Ben.
Lisa, I'm excited to be here with you. Thank you for that awesome introduction and for having me on your podcast.
I'm excited to talk with you. You have a new book release. This is your fourth book, and we have so much to share with our amazing audience today. So let's just take it back a little bit. We're all so passionate about what we do and helping people. I'd like to hear what happened that led you to that point. I know you were 80 pounds overweight, pre-diabetes, you had an autoimmune condition, Raynaud's, before you became this metabolic health expert that now millions of people follow. So, Ben, what was rock bottom for you? And when you realized that all the things you've been doing and the conventional advice, a lot of it's eat less, move more, that had failed you.
Yes, exactly. And my rock bottom was pretty bad, and everybody's rock bottom is different, of course. But for me, for most of my life, I was very unhealthy for 20 plus years. So as a kid, I was overweight and then eventually obese. My mother worked at Kentucky Fried Chicken, so she would, being an amazing mom, doing the best she could do to make ends meet, she would bring home Kentucky Fried Chicken. So I ate a lot of fast food, hung out with the wrong crowd, and as an adult, like in my early 20s, 23 years old, where most people are graduating college, maybe starting a career or starting a family. That wasn't me. I was depressed. I was inflamed. I had suicidal thoughts. I was exploring ways to end my life because I was tired of being in such pain every single day. The only reason I didn't take my own life is because I kept thinking about my mother. I kept
Mm.
thinking about the devastation I would cause her if I took my life, and I didn't want to do that to her. But that was the only thread that I was hanging on. And at that time, as you mentioned, I had prediabetes, high blood pressure, erectile dysfunction, digestive issues like back pain, knee pain. My body felt inflamed. And I went to my doctor. I made my appointment and I explained all the symptoms. This 23-year-old man explaining my symptoms. And not once did my doctor ask me, what are you eating? Or how's your lifestyle? How's your sleep, your stress? That conversation never came up. Instead, he suggested that I go on a medication for my blood pressure, a medication for XYZ. And I was 23 years old. I asked the question, like, if I go on this, do I have to stay on this for the rest of my life, or is this just short term? And he said, I'm not sure. We'll kind of manage it and see how it goes. And that answer was not, I didn't feel comfortable about that answer. I was 23. There's no way I wanted to go on a medication and stay on that for the rest of my life. So I declined the medication and I started digging into some of the research we had back then, which we didn't have your awesome podcast. We didn't have ChatGPT and YouTube, and maybe we did have YouTube, but there was not a lot of information back there on YouTube on health. So for me, it was like bodybuilding.com, Men's Health Magazine, those little magazines at the aisle of your grocery store like Whole Foods and Publix. And I would just read that and I just made some simple changes. I started moving my body. I started playing basketball, which I love, biking, and then working out. I started eating real food. And I became really obsessed with nutrition because I started to see the results. And, the most important thing that I did, Lisa, that I didn't even mention is that I took responsibility because up until that point, I was playing the victim. I kept telling myself, I'm overweight, I'm obese, I'm unhealthy because of my enabling family member, mom, because of my slow metabolism, my bad genetics. But it wasn't any of that. It was me not taking responsibility. So I really believe the second you take responsibility is the second you create great change in your life. So I did that. I took responsibility. And 9 months after that, I went through this incredible transformation. I lost 80 pounds in 9 months. I went from being physically obese to being physically fit, 34% body fat at my highest weight to 6% body fat at my lowest weight. And
Wow.
it just completely transformed my physical appearance. But what you didn't see is what it did for my mental health. And yeah, it's cool to get a physical six pack, but more important than that was the mental six pack that I achieved and what it did to help get rid of those depressing thoughts, the suicidal thoughts. And that was about 18 years ago. I've been in this space ever since, really fascinated about metabolism and health and metabolic flexibility. I've had the honor of working with tens of thousands of people. What we did recently is we downloaded all the comments of my YouTube videos from the past 2 years and they put into ChatGPT and we asked Chat to calculate the amount of weight loss from these comments. And we've helped my community lose over 1 million pounds of fat in the last 2 years with these strategies. So that is just such an honor and it's so cool to do that. I'm excited to talk about those strategies on your podcast today.
Oh my gosh, that is such a great thing to be able to say. That's
It's super
amazing.
cool.
Yeah, think about the health impact you've had just by sharing your story and the knowledge that you found and how many lives you've already transformed. That is awesome. So,
Thank you,
you
Lisa.
mentioned something really important just a minute ago as you were talking about all the changes you made, Ben. And one of them, you said the most important thing you found was the mental aspect. So, in your intro, you mentioned mental obesity. What is it? What's mental obesity, and how does it contribute to people feeling sick, tired, and stuck?
I love this question because I think it's the number one reason why people feel sick, unhealthy, and stuck.
Mhm.
Mental health is everything. And just to unpack it, the average person has about 60,000 thoughts every day, according to research from psychiatrists. 60,000. And they estimate that about 90% of those thoughts are the same thoughts from yesterday. So we're not really originating new thoughts. We're just kind of going through the motions. And
Mhm.
around 85% of those thoughts are negative thoughts, what
Right.
Ziglar used to call stinking thinking.
Yep.
And what I wrote about in KetoFlex is that if you're thinking it's stinking, your dreams are shrinking. So
That's good.
your thoughts have a direct influence over your cellular health. Every thought is a frequency that tells your DNA to perform a certain job. And if it's an angry, hateful, resentful thought, that signal is being sent to your DNA, tells your DNA to produce inflammatory proteins, inflammatory processes, which damages your DNA over time. But if it's a healthy thought, a loving thought, a grateful thought, the signal sent to your DNA helps to protect the DNA. So it's really cool to understand that because if you have 60,000 thoughts a day, that means you have 60,000 opportunities every day to put your body in a healing, anti-inflammatory state. It is really incredible. And for me, it's the main focus of what I teach and what I personally do. Like your mental health is everything. And so many people, I believe we have this obesity issue here in the United States where Harvard is saying in 2030 that 50% of people will be obese. I think for a good percentage of these people that are obese, it's not because of what they're eating, but because of what's eating them.
Mm.
They lack goals, they lack purpose, and they feel that. And this is my story. They feel that with these bad behaviors, the processed food, the addictions, that is exactly what happened to me. But when I started getting clear on my goals and my values, I didn't have time for that trivial stuff. I really was focused on growth and moving forward. And I really believe for a lot of people, they're not tired, they're uninspired. They have nothing to look forward to. The biggest excitement is that football game happening over the weekend. And I'm not saying don't watch football and have fun, but that shouldn't be the most exciting thing in your week. It should be something you look forward to, that you're working on and progressing towards. And once you find that, you'll have all the energy, you'll have all the vitality. You won't have time for the trivial stuff, the processed junk food, the bad relationships. And that's exactly what happened to me. So it's huge. And it goes hand in hand because what you eat directly influences your mood, and your mood directly influences what you eat. You clean up your diet, clean up your thoughts, and it works magically.
So good. You're preaching to the choir. That whole mindset piece is the key. What I found over the years with clients is you can do all the work and they can be successful, but what you're talking about is so much more important. It's the identity work.
That's it.
behind. So let's talk about someone who's in the shoes you were in almost 20 years ago. And they have a lot going on and it's hard and it's stressful and they're exhausted and they don't feel well. And maybe they're a single mom, or maybe it's just somebody who has a whole lot on their plate and it's hard. Life is hard. How does someone begin to make that shift mentally that begins to turn the ship?
I love the question. And the word you mentioned is the image, which is important. You got to change that image of yourself, your self-image. And if you're
Mhm.
having a hard time right now, it's important to focus on the solution and not the challenge, the problem, because the more you fixate on the things that are working against you, the more energy you give it, the more it grows.
Yeah.
And I'm not just saying it's about a matter of positive thinking. It's not what I'm talking about here, but the idea is to shift your energy into the solution. And the more you feed into the solution, the more it's going to manifest for you. So what I would recommend, number one, is to grab an index card, a piece of paper, and write on that what you want to achieve with your health, with your life. And you simply write it down. I'm so happy and grateful now that, and you write in the present tense the things that you want to achieve, but you write it down as if it's already done. And what's going to happen is as you write it down, you might not believe it at all. And that's fine. You don't have to believe it in the beginning, but do it. And as you write it down and start reading it every single day, every single night, all of a sudden, this new idea of this beautiful new life you want to create, it now starts to replace the old version, the old image that you have in your subconscious mind. And that is how that subconscious mind was built. The reason why you have the challenges and that certain self-image is because you've reinforced it throughout your lifetime, especially when you were a kid. The only way to change it is to reinforce the new idea. So for me, I did this during my transformation. I wrote on a card, I'm so happy and grateful now that I'm at my perfect weight. The perfect health I seek is now seeking me. I remove any blockages between us. And I kept reading it over and over and over until that idea just created like a tattoo into my brain. It was a new idea that now my subconscious mind accepted because that subconscious mind accepts everything, whether it's real, imagined, or it doesn't matter. It accepts everything. So that is what I would recommend. And there's going to be a percentage of your audience, Lisa, that thinks that's like woo woo, it doesn't work. And my counter to that would be look, if your way is not working, why don't you try mine? Do this for 30 days and see what it does for you. And I'm telling you, it'll be huge. It'll be a game changer for your health because that is the goal. We need to change the self-image. As you change that self-image, you will change your identity and you'll change your behaviors and essentially your results.
Mm, I love it. I completely agree. And I hear Bob Proctor right now. Like
Oh,
I am so happy and grateful that,
you
yes.
know Bob.
Oh, I know, but yes,
I'm
I mean,
so impressed.
I've studied him relentlessly. So I am so happy and grateful. Go through that card one more time. So anyone listening, if they want to stop and write it down, because
I
this is the key, Ben. You are dropping gold right here.
I'm so impressed that you know
Thank
Bob and you study Bob. I love Bob Proctor. He is the greatest teacher in the history of this world. He's passed on now, but
Amen.
his work lives on forever. In my studio here, you would love this. There's a photo of Bob sitting in my studio. He's a part of the set. I just love his work. Yesterday, he would have been 92 years old. Yesterday was his birthday. And I study him every day. This morning, I already studied him, and he's incredible. And that's exactly it. Bob
Hmm.
said it the
I
best,
have
right?
chills. I love
Yeah,
it.
I love it. You need to change that programming. The paradigm is what he called it. And you do it with a card. You write down the opposite of whatever you're struggling with, you write down the opposite. So if you have trouble waking up in the morning, you write that down on a card. I have trouble waking up in the morning, and then you tear it up or burn it and you get rid of that. Then you write the opposite. When I get up, I wake up. I'm ready to go. I'm energized. And you reinforce that. If you have trouble with food addiction and carbohydrate addiction, you write
Mhm.
down, I have trouble with snacking and grazing and sugar and carbs, and you tear that up, throw it away, and then you write, I'm so happy and grateful now that I'm free from food addiction, free from sugar addiction, and you start reinforcing that idea. I know that there's going to be people that don't really believe that, and that's okay. Just do it. Like I mentioned, do it for 30 days and see what it does for you. I've done this with goals. I've done this to change different paradigms. I have a goal card right here that I read every single day. So you could do this with every area of your life. You could even record your voice and listen to it as an affirmation over and over and over. And it's changed my life. It sounds like it's changed your life as well, Lisa. And it's just a game changer for everything.
And for our listener today who it may sound like woo, I get that. I totally understand that. And I know you do too. But there's neuroscience that backs it up. The credibility, actual neuroscience that shows that our subconscious, as you said earlier, listens to everything we tell it. So if those 60,000 thoughts are negative on the repeat, then the subconscious's job is simply to carry out the instruction. It's just like a computer in the sense that we give it an instruction and it completes the command. So if we change the quality of the commands that go into the most amazing computer ever created, then we change the output. And so the science is clear that what the subconscious needs is a clear message and the emotion behind it, the feeling of gratitude. And I know that gratitude is who you are, right, Ben? When we do that, we now change the programming and the output changes.
Well said. And you mentioned the feeling. That's the most important thing. At the beginning, it's going to feel mechanical for most people. You're writing it down, you're reading it, it's going to feel mechanical. You're just going through the motions probably. But then when you bring the feelings into it, it accelerates this replacement of the old idea, the old image into your subconscious mind. The subconscious mind accepts everything. I just want to reinforce that message one more time. Earl Nightingale used to say, you could plant corn, a sweet food, or nightshade, a deadly poison, right next to each other, and both will grow at the same abundance of what you feed it and how you water it. So it could be a negative thought or a positive thought. Both will grow in abundance. It depends on what you feed it. So why not feed the positive corn here in this scenario, the sweet corn, which are the positive thoughts, the positive outcome? Too many people, as I mentioned, that study, 60,000 thoughts, 85% are negative. They're feeding the wrong crop. So you change that by simply reading the new image over and over again.
I am really grateful that you have gone into this piece of it because this is where everything changes for people. So let's get tactical. So many people struggle to lose weight. They're eating less, they're counting calories, they're cutting calories, they're trying the different opportunities to try, whether it's keto or intermittent fasting or just cutting carbs or paleo or whatever. Walk us through what's happening when someone is cutting calories and the scale's not moving.
That's an approach a lot of people take, and it's the approach I used to teach for many, many years. It's just calories in versus calories out. We treat the body like a math equation, and there's something wrong with that approach. Now, let me explain that. When you cut calories, for most people, you're going to lose weight in the beginning, but then it will slow down. Eventually, it'll stall, and there's only so much you can cut. There's a better way. It's not about calories, and it comes down to your premise and how you believe the body operates. So the people that believe that it's all about calories in versus calories out, their premise is that you need to lose weight so you could get healthy. That is their premise. But that is not how the body works. We don't lose weight to get healthy. We get healthy to lose weight.
Yes.
There's a huge difference there. And nobody has a weight problem. I used to be obese. I never had a weight problem. It is a weight symptom. So by focusing on calories in versus calories out, you are treating the symptom. And you're distracted from what really matters, which is hormones and inflammation. That is the root cause of why somebody can't lose weight. So by shifting the premise and understanding that it's about getting healthy to lose weight, that is the first step there. And when you start doing that and start focusing on the quality, not the quantity of calories, it's so much easier because you're not relying on willpower or discipline or counting every piece of gum that goes into your mouth. Like, it's so much easier. And unfortunately, a lot of people still believe that it's just about calories in versus calories out. And I do think calories matter, Lisa, but I don't think they're the most important thing. And what happens is when you are on a caloric restriction for too long, the body starts to feel threatened. You're giving it signals that you're going through famine. You're giving it signals that it should feel stressed. And it will not want to burn the extra fat. It'll only get you to a certain point where you plateau and you stall. And most people think, all right, I'm just going to exercise more, or I'm going to cut more, or do a combination of both, which then kind of gets you some more results. And then the body feels threatened again. And then it slows down fat burning, because you can't burn fat if your body feels like it's being threatened. It does not want to burn fat. Fat is very important for survival. So it'll do everything. It'll break down muscle to preserve the fat. It'll slow metabolic rate to preserve the fat. We don't want to go that route. I'll give you an example. A friend of mine Chris, who actually built this whole studio here. Last December, he started working for me, building the studio, and he was very much overweight. And he's like, Ben, look, I don't know what to do. I'm in a caloric restriction. I've been in a caloric restriction for years. Like, he's over 100 pounds overweight. I don't know what to do. I told Chris, like, your body is running from a bear right now that it can't see. It feels threatened. Like, your body thinks it's in survival mode, deprivation mode, scarcity mode, famine mode. So what I did with Chris, I tripled his caloric intake, tripled his calories. And in 30 days, he lost over 20 pounds.
Amazing.
How do you explain that to the calories in versus calories out people, Lisa? Like, I tripled his calories. He lost 20 pounds because we gave his body the signal that it's
Mm-hmm.
safe, release
Yep.
the stored fat. So I know you agree with that. Hormones and inflammation and changing the signal, not caloric restriction.
It's absolutely true. You gave his body what it needed. And once it got what it needed, it took a breath and was like, okay, I know what to do if I have what I need. But as we continue, it is kind of like that desperation. We keep cutting, cutting, and it never works. Plus, that elevated cortisol is driving that obesity, driving that weight gain up. I love that you tripled his caloric intake. He was probably scared to death initially,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Ben, what are you doing to me? I can't do it. You know, that when we talk about metabolism, what is metabolic freedom? You talk about that in your book. And why is that the missing key to people having the health that they want?
Metabolic freedom is metabolic flexibility. That is the goal. Every human being should be aiming to achieve metabolic flexibility. Unfortunately, in the US, 93% of Americans are metabolically unhealthy. They're metabolically inflexible. Their metabolisms are stuck burning sugar and glucose from food. And what happens when you're a sugar burner like that, it's not a fun way to live your life because now you're relying on food for energy, and that's short-term energy, short-lived energy, where you have all this food noise, this food chatter. Like, you have snacks available all the time because in case your glucose drops, your energy drops, you have to reach for something to sustain energy. And yeah, short term, that food will give you some energy to get through your day, but long term, it leads to insulin resistance, type 2 diabetes, and that opens up a whole host of other diseases out there. That is a metabolic prison. That's the opposite of metabolic freedom. A healthy metabolism that's metabolically flexible, what I call metabolically free, has the ability to burn carbohydrates and use that for energy and then burn fat or protein or just fast and burn stored body fat. When you're metabolically unhealthy, you have all this excess body fat on your body. You have the love handles, the belly fat, the visceral fat. Yet you have all this energy that can't be tapped and used for fuel. It's
Mhm.
very frustrating because you have all this stored fat, all these stored calories, and the body can't access it because it's so used to burning food for fuel, sugar and carbs for fuel. And what's going to make that switch from sugar burning to fat burning and eventually metabolic flexibility is going to be the hormone insulin. Insulin is the key that unlocks that for you, the fat burn switch. So we want to find ways to lower insulin. I talk about that in KetoFlex, which is my new book. And the best ways to lower insulin to unlock the fat burning is to lower carbohydrate intake, increase protein and fat, eliminate snacking in between meals. So have your breakfast, lunch, and dinner as a good start. If you want snacks, have your snacks with your meals. And then build lean muscle mass. So there's so many different strategies that I could go into, but that's the name of the game. It's insulin sensitivity. Once you lower
Mm.
insulin, your body is going to switch over to burning fat for fuel. And that is the key that unlocks metabolic flexibility.
So good. I love that your book talks about that and walks people through it, Ben. We're not hearing about elevated insulin, and it's not even tested for unless someone knows to ask for that test, which can be added to standard labs. You can just add an insulin check in there as well. And that is a missing piece you brought up, and it's critical. How does somebody know if they are metabolically inflexible or flexible?
Yeah, and you brought up a good point there with the fasting insulin blood test. You're right. Most doctors don't test for it. And
Mhm.
it's one of the most important tests because the research is showing, especially the study that I put in the book from the Whitehall 2 study, showing that you could have full-blown insulin resistance, hyperinsulinemia, for 6 to 14 years without your blood sugars changing at all, including your A1C and your fasting glucose, because the body is so busy producing massive amounts of insulin to keep glucose low until it can no longer do that anymore. So the fasting insulin is such an important test. I would argue it's probably the most important test for your metabolism. The second problem, though, Lisa, is when they do the test, the reference range on that test is between 3 and 25 or 3 and 28. So if it comes back that fasting insulin as 21 or 17 or 11, most doctors will not flag that as being high. That's high. That's insulin resistance. So you want
Mm.
your fasting insulin to be very sensitive between 3 and 6. That is the sweet spot. That is the sweet spot right there.
How does somebody know if they haven't yet had their fasting insulin test done? How do they know what their metabolic flexibility is like?
I could walk into a room full of people and I could spot insulin resistance. I could spot sugar burners. I could spot metabolically unhealthy individuals. So I look for a few things here that I'll share with your audience. So I look for skin tags on their skin. Skin tags are going to usually show up around the eyelid, the
Hmm.
neck, and if they have a tank top on, I could see it on their triceps or sometimes their back. Skin
Hmm.
tags are a sign of insulin resistance. It's growth. Insulin is a growth factor. So sometimes that leads to skin tags, which are
Wow.
these nasty looking little tags that the body produces. And most people go to their dermatologist and they just slice it off, right? But
Mhm.
that is not the solution. As a matter of fact, as you lower insulin and become metabolically healthy, those skin tags could fall right off of your skin, which is super
Oh,
cool. I see it all the
that's
time.
amazing.
It's really, really cool. So skin tags are number one, Lisa.
Hmm.
The second thing is also a skin related issue, which is brown patches around the neck, usually behind the neck and like towards the neck here. That's also a sign of insulin resistance. Also, if I could see their armpit, brown patches in their armpit area, those are signs of insulin resistance. So I would look at that. And then just, of course, one of the things I look for is like a round, hard belly, because that is showing visceral fat. Not necessarily somebody who's overweight with like jiggly belly fat, which is more subcutaneous. I'm referring to somebody who's like has a protruding belly. Either it's like small protruding or big protruding, but it's
Yeah.
hard and round. People call it like a beer belly or a cortisol belly. That is
Yeah.
visceral fat. That is the worst type of fat, the most dangerous fat in your body. It's a result of insulin resistance. So those are three things I look for. Now, if I have a conversation with somebody, I'll ask them questions like, do you typically feel tired after eating meals, especially a like high carbohydrate meal? And if they say yeah, that could be a sign of insulin resistance and metabolic inflexibility. I'll ask them, how much extra weight do you have in your body? And they say, well, I'm like 20 pounds or more overweight. That's probably a sign of insulin resistance and metabolic inflexibility. And then the last question I'll ask is, hey, if you skip a meal, whether it's intentional or unintentional, how do you feel? And if they say, oh, my energy drops, I can't focus, I get irritable, I'm kind of like a hypoglycemic, that's a sign of insulin resistance. So those are the things I pay attention to, whether I look at somebody or ask them the questions. If you have any of those, it's a huge problem and a good reason or a good percentage that you might have insulin resistance and metabolic dysfunction.
That is really helpful, Ben. I did not know it was 6 to 14 years someone could have elevated insulin, have no idea, and their blood sugar and HbA1c look perfectly fine. So
That's right.
they'll tell you all along, like, I'm good. Like, I'm not insulin resistant. I'm not pre-diabetic. My sugar is always good. But I look at a cookie and I gain 10 pounds. And like you said, the hunger between meals where you get hangry and you're like, oh my gosh, I got to eat now. But interesting about the brown patches around your
Yeah.
neck and the skin tags, that is such helpful information. Yeah, so guys, as you hear that, just good things to pay attention to. And then when you do get that, just standard blood work, ask them to throw fasting insulin on because once you see that, you realize there's more going on under the surface. In your book, you talk about intermittent fasting. How do you personally apply that in your own life? Do you have a really long window? Is it modified intermittent fasting?
I love fasting. I think it is the greatest health tool we have available, the greatest biohack that's just been around forever. There's nothing new about it, but you got to know how to use that tool. So the way I talk about fasting and KetoFlex is that it's fasting is like a chainsaw. If you purchase a chainsaw and you take some time to read the user manual, you're now know how to use that chainsaw, you'll get amazing results. But if you purchase the chainsaw and skip the user manual and start wielding it around, you could hurt yourself. It's the same thing with fasting. You got to know how to use that tool. And for me, I love it. I feel best when I'm fasted. Like this morning, right now, as I record with you, I'm fasted because I feel more energized and focused when I'm fasted. So that's when I do my content, my book writing, my most energy and intensive work. So I typically eat between 12 p.m. and 5 p.m. And I usually have two protein, fat focused meals during those 5 hours or so. And for me, that works. Now, I typically also throw in a 24-hour fast once a week. If I'm traveling, I usually fast. I don't eat at the airport. I don't eat on the airplane because there's not a lot of good options there. I typically just fast. And then about once a year, I'll throw in a longer fast, what I call a block fast, which is 3 to 5 days of just water fasting as a way to just clear out the junk and reset the body. Now, that's how I do it. In
Yeah.
KetoFlex, I talk about how it's different for men versus women. It's different for menstruating women versus postmenopausal women. So I go in different chapters and different plans depending on where you're at. But for me, that's how I do it. It's a game changer. I feel incredible when I fast, but it's because I'm metabolically flexible and I've done the work. That is important. So in the book, I show you how to do the work before you start adding in fasting.
That is really great advice. For some people, fasting is not a good idea, but it's because their body isn't yet ready for that, right? But I
That's
love
right.
walk people through in the book. This is how you prime your body to get to the point that fasting will bring on all the benefits, clarity, and cleaning the junk out, the autophagy. It's amazing. What are some of the biggest fasting mistakes you do see people make?
The first one is what you just said. They go into it too soon, too aggressively, too soon without becoming more metabolically flexible, right? If you go into
Mhm.
a fast as a sugar burner, it is not going to be enjoyable. You're not going to have the mental clarity I'm talking about here. You're not going to burn the fat. Your body is going to actually break down muscle in this situation. So the reason why is because your metabolism doesn't know how to access stored fat for fuel. Insulin has been high. It's like being a couch potato for 10 years and then signing up for a CrossFit workout and giving it all you got in that first workout. Like you're going to hurt yourself.
No.
When you go into a fast as a sugar burner, glucose starts getting low in the brain, low in the body. The brain
Mm.
panics. It sends the body intense signals for carbohydrates and sugar to fulfill the desire of getting glucose back up in the brain. It hasn't accessed stored fat for fuel. You have all this fat, but you can't access it yet because you've been stuck burning sugar. So you feel awful. You get intense cravings. And if you just have pure willpower, I'm going to just persevere. I don't care. I'm going to go 16 hours, 20 hours. Your metabolism will start breaking down muscle for
Mhm.
fuel or raising stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline to create gluconeogenesis to fulfill that brain's desire. So the goal is to become fat adapted. And it doesn't take a long time. Like Pillar One in KetoFlex shows you how to get fat adapted in 7 days. So
Wow.
for most people, 7 days, that's all it takes, right? And that is the goal. And when you do that first and then go into fasting, it makes it so much more enjoyable. So that's the first mistake that people make when it comes to fasting. They go into it as a sugar burner, they don't feel great. The second mistake is that they do too much fasting, even when they're metabolically flexible. And that's something that I did that I'm guilty of because I feel so great fasted. I feel amazing. I feel energized. It's just the best time for me. So I thought more fasting is probably better. Like more of a good thing is probably a good thing. That's not true because you mentioned autophagy, which is great. It's clearing out junk in your cells, your mitochondria. It's catabolic, but it's catabolic in a good way where you're getting rid of the junk. But too much autophagy is not good. And if you're not balancing out fasting with feasting, and especially getting enough protein, like it's too much for your body to adapt to because fasting is a stress. And if you apply too much of it, it's too much of a stress for your body. For me, the mistake that I made and the mistake people make is they don't balance out the fasting with the feasting. And when I say feasting, getting enough protein, getting enough meals where you're signaling to your body, you're in a fed state, you're in an abundant state. So that's the second mistake I see people make with fasting.
Okay, that's really good to know. And both of those mistakes send us back into that survival mode that we talked about earlier. And
Yes.
Chris, the body then is dropping massive amounts of cortisol saying, hey, I'm being chased by this bear. So I love that you nuance that for us in that your book walks people through. And honestly, a preliminary 7-day phase to get to that point is not long at all. That's pretty remarkable. So,
Thank you. And I've applied that same 7-day principle. And in fact, these 4 pillars in the book, I've applied it to over 10,000 students over the last few years. And it works really, really well. And that's where, as I was taking these students through the program, all these questions started popping up. Like, how do I do keto if I don't have a gallbladder? Or how do I do fasting if I'm postmenopausal? Or what's the best time to fast or do keto if I have a menstrual cycle? So I addressed all that in the book, all the questions, all the top questions. I addressed it in the book. I got great feedback from my students, and it's all in the book. And 7 days is all you need to get that fat burning adaptation before you practice fasting.
amazing. Okay, what are the 4 pillars in your book?
The first pillar is called adapt. So we just discussed that, getting fat adapted, going from burning sugar to burning fat. And I teach you how to do that in the first 7 days. The
Mhm.
second pillar is called fast, which now we start implementing intermittent fasting. And we start very gently here in the beginning, like 12-hour fast and 14-hour fast, but it becomes a lot easier as you're getting more fat adapted. So fast is the second pillar. So adapt, fast. The third pillar is called phase. This is kind of, it is an elimination diet where we're phasing out top foods that create intestinal permeability, leaky gut. So we do a variation of a carnivore diet or an elimination diet where there's different levels to it depending on how aggressive you want to be, but we're phasing out these anti-nutrients, these inflammatory foods for the gut short term to just
Mhm.
restore gut function. And then the fourth pillar is the flex pillar, KetoFlex.
Mm.
And that is when you have achieved metabolic flexibility. Now we start flexing in and out of ketosis. We start flexing from fast days to feast days. And that's where it gets customized for men versus women, and then women who are postmenopausal versus women who have a menstrual cycle. So those are the 4 pillars, Lisa. It's adapt, fast, phase, and then flex.
What a comprehensive journey you're taking your clients and your readers through. So, Ben, you have a 10-year goal to help 1 billion people achieve metabolic health. So, with a goal that big, tell our listeners where to start. And then we want to talk about how to find you and how to find your new book.
Thank you, Lisa. That is the goal. That is the mission to inspire 1 billion people to take responsibility over their health, like I did, and like how you teach your community to do so as well. Where you start is to focus on the foundations of health. So many people in our space, they talk about the minors and they're majoring in the minors. They're focused on the supplements. They're focused on the biohacks, the red light, the cold plunge, the sexy things to talk about. And I'm not against any of that. I'm a big fan of supplements, a big fan of cold plunge and sauna and red light. I do all of that, but I don't start there. Those are additions to the foundation. So you start by lowering your carbs. You start by eliminating snacks. You start by eating whole foods, single ingredient foods. You start by improving your sleep and your stress. You start by moving your body. These are all the foundations. Once you've mastered that, then you start adding in the sexy things, the supplements, the biohacks if you want. But start at the foundations because once you build this beautiful house of health and that foundation is nice and strong, you have such a solid foundation where you're going to get momentum, you're going to have sustainability versus people who skip that foundation. Now they have these walls of health falling down one at a time because they just skip this part. So that's where I would start, the foundations of health. And I forgot to mention the most important part, which is where we started, the mindset. That is foundation, the thoughts, the self-image, the paradigm. That's a part of the foundation. Start there, then add the other stuff.
That's great. You start building on the foundation. And as you said, then the things like the supplements and the biohacks, then they actually do something. But how many times have, I mean, myself or so many people I've worked with or know, if they start with the other stuff first and bring it in, it'll work for a little while and then it'll completely stop. Or they'll say, I don't know if my supplements are actually helping me
That's
because
right.
you can't out supplement the foundations.
I 100% agree. And, a lot of people are guilty of that. I was guilty of that myself.
Mhm.
They'll add so many different things all at once and they overwhelm themselves and then they give up 2 weeks in. So it's not about going big or going home. It's about what I say in KetoFlex. It's about a tweak a week, right? A tweak a week.
Oh, it's so good.
And I
Yeah.
show you how to do that in the book and start with the foundations and everything else becomes a lot easier.
Yeah. And none of it then feels massive. you're just doing one step at a time. And all of a sudden, as you realized in your own life, you're down 80 pounds. You have energy like you've never had before. Your mindset is totally different. You're living a completely opposite life of what you lived in
So true.
2007.
If I could do it, anybody can do it, honestly. Really.
You're pretty
I hope
amazing.
that inspires
I
others.
agree. Absolutely. So tell us how to grab KetoFlex. Where do people buy it? How do they find out more about you?
Yeah, thank you for that opportunity to share about that.
Mhm.
KetoFlex is available July 21st, and it's going to be available on paperback, Kindle, but also if you like listening to books, it's available on Audible and Spotify. You could use a credit, or if you have like a Spotify premium account, you get it for free as well. And I narrated the entire book on those audios, and at the end of every chapter on the audiobook, I give additional content where I'm doing these coaching sessions. So wherever you want to get it from, whatever format you want to get it from, get it. But if you go to ketoflexbook.com, you can see all those formats and you get a ton of bonuses over at ketoflexbook.com, thousands of dollars worth of audio downloads, PDF downloads. So I would recommend going there if you want those free bonuses. I'm really
Oh,
excited about the book. It has a 45-day game plan. It helps customize keto and fasting for you. And the best place to get it is ketoflexbook.com or wherever books are sold.
that is amazing. I love the bonuses that you're providing. So
Yeah,
we'll
it was a
have,
fun to have
yeah,
that.
well, it's definitely in the show notes. And this is airing the you launched yesterday. So I'm very excited that anyone can get the book now today.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's so cool. So go get the book. It's out right now, according to Lisa.
KetoFlexbook.com. Let's go.
Let's
Right. I
go.
already people I'm buying it for. So
I
yeah,
love it. Oh, that's so great. Thank you for that.
absolutely. Ben, thank you for such an amazing conversation. I have loved every minute of it.
I have loved it too. I'm grateful for our mutual friend Reed Davis for connecting us. And
Yes.
I've got vitamin G for you, Lisa, on the work that you're doing. Congrats on your success with your podcast. You said you just hit 4 years of your podcast, which is very impressive, very rare. The stat is that 90% of people who start a podcast do not get past 10 episodes. So you are in rare
Wow.
air,
Wow.
and I appreciate your attitude. I really appreciate your love of Bob Proctor's work. Not
Oh,
everybody studies
I
him
love
or
that.
even knows him, but you do. So I love that. And just thank you so much for allowing me to come on your podcast and talk about my work and my book.
It's been an absolute joy. Thank you again. And guys, thanks for joining in today. I appreciate you, and I'll be back next week. Until then, stay pretty well. Bye.